We have built a GTM system that is, I would say, probably 80% automated. And we are currently able to generate 19 times more leads than we were able to generate a few months ago before we launched the system. I'm very skeptical towards the idea that thousands of layoffs in major American enterprises are caused by AI. I'm yet to see one engineer being fired because of what we sell. I have very little trust in AI tools creating great customer research. Everything I have tried and I have seen coming from other sources so far only looks good on paper, but it doesn't correspond what's actually happening in people's head. When I did my calculations and my revenue projections, I could see that the amount of money I save on hiring SDRs, for example, versus the tools that allow me to do the SDR job, I could see that, unfortunately, human input in this particular area is not that valuable anymore. So we replaced SDRs with a bunch of tools and sequences, and it works for us for now. When in private conversations, I ask, how do you measure the impact of AI? Hardly anyone has a good answer.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Evergrow show, and today we have with us Esther Katz. Esther is a seasoned CMO who has led 6 successful exits and has helped drive over $1 billion in revenue for deep tech companies. Esther is an absolute expert in all things brand, demand gen, category creation, and strategic partnerships. Esther, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today.
Of course, and thank you for having me, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays to you as well. Yeah, Esther is taking the time during the holiday season to sit down and chat, so you already know this is going to be a very, very deep and valuable conversation. I just want to kick it off with a pretty simple question, but what are some of the things that you are most excited about?
Man, well, I knew you were going to ask that, so let me just say I'm mostly excited about many things. Mostly I'm excited about the strategic vision that I am executing now, and that's the vision of paving the road to AI in enterprise America with the help of agentic AI. And I know it sounds like a lot, and I hope we can work through that vision in our conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's so interesting. Obviously, I've spoken to people on this show that have been really paving the path for the future of marketing for the last several decades. And pretty much always, first and foremost, people mention that I am really excited about AI. So I'm glad to hear that you're in the camp that's actually excited about these tools and less so the camp that's worried about these tools. But I would love to hear a little bit more about kind of what that means to you and what AI means to you in this new era of go-to-market.
I've been working as a marketer with AI companies for many, many years before AI became the AI we know it. My first AI project started in 2018. So I had a chance to learn how AI works, what AI is, large language models, generative AI, working with some very, very prominent researchers and scientists, and then helping to create GTM strategies and basically sell products and services. But first, I had to do a lot of education for myself to understand how the stuff actually works. And because I do understand now how the stuff works, also I learned computational linguistics when I did my major in linguistics in university many, many years ago. So this topic is kind of familiar for me. Therefore, because I do understand AI, nothing in AI really scares me. What concerns me is the abundance of myths that are built around AI and all the anxiety and bad PR that is used by some people and forces in order to maybe create some cover-ups for some of the drawbacks, economic downfalls that really have nothing to do with AI, and inability of people who don't work in AI industry to determine and to identify true and false. That's probably the most concerning aspect of this discourse right now for me.
Yeah, and you're actually one of the few people that is entering this new, I would call it the AI hype era, right? AI tools have been around for a very, very long time in certain industries more prominently than others, but I feel like there are a lot of folks who are just starting to be exposed to them and just starting to experiment with them and really see the fact that they are changing fundamentally how we work because they are proliferating into the workplace, into every workplace at a pretty astounding rate. But I love to hear that not only, are you embracing it full force, but you also fundamentally understand how these tools function. And rather than, just reading the media headlines and, seeing AI tools are, responsible for job losses and AI tools will replace humans in the next year. You are coming at this from a fundamentals and first principles perspective, actually having a really good sense of how these tools are built and the functionality behind the scenes. But I guess, based on that, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of this, truths versus myths, right? There's a lot of headlines out there. There's a lot of people saying a lot of different things, but, how do you differentiate between what you truly believe is possible and what you truly think is happening in the workforce and how AI is impacting, especially the marketing industry? And what do you think is just a lot of hype and potential myths and potential scare tactics for a variety of reasons?
I'm very skeptical towards the idea that thousands of layoffs in major American enterprises are caused by AI. I'm just yet to see the proof of such a fundamental influence of AI products on the capabilities of workforce to that an enterprise would be able to afford to get rid of thousands of trained professionals because they were completely replaced by an AI tool. I sell Genesis Computing, which is AI agents for data engineers day to day. It's part of my job as the head of marketing. I not only create strategies, but I actually sit on sales calls, very close to revenue, very close to customers. Customers that buy agentic AI for data engineering from Genesis, none of them are firing their data engineers. They're struggling to hire data engineers. That's another side of the story. Are they buying Genesis tools in order to turn their data engineers into superheroes, increase their productivity, give them super abilities that their competitors don't have? Yeah, for sure. Because it's, there is always competition. If you look at any sector of economics, and financial sector is the driver of American economy, it's been like this for centuries. And we work with financial sector a lot, and competition is super tight. We are talking about margins of decimal percent, right? So of course, any tool that can help win that game, they're gonna implement it, they're gonna use it, they're gonna experiment with it. And this is why we are so extremely successful closing our deals, because we exactly do that. We give that competitive advantage. But again, I'm yet to see one engineer being fired because of what we sell. It just doesn't happen. Can they create better things in shorter time? Oh, percent. That's exactly what we sell. But blaming AI for all these layoffs is very, very naive. Yeah.
I fundamentally agree with you. I have my own theories on it. I think what we're actually seeing is this pendulum swing of we overhired because the economy was booming and we had insane budgets and we thought we needed to scale headcount in order to continue growing. And then as growth probably didn't align necessarily with projections, we are starting to realize that maybe we didn't need to hire all of these people, and we're starting to see layoffs as just a byproduct of overhiring. But AI is such a convenient scapegoat and came at such a perfect time to basically say, Oh yeah, all these layoffs are happening because of AI, of course, not because we overspent and overhired and, effectively made a human capital mistake. So, yeah, for a multitude of reasons. Again, that's just my theory, but I do agree with you that I do not think that we are at the point in time in which AI tools are replacing humans in any meaningful way. Not to say that, who knows, maybe we do get there to a point, but I do appreciate that sentiment from you, 100%.
And saying that, however, I would like to talk about another aspect, and that is intermediaries and services that are being wiped out right now. And that has nothing to do with corporate America, but it has everything to do with people who build their whole business on labor arbitrage, for
Mm.
example, selling redundant routine jobs or functions through labor arbitrage, hiring in cheaper countries, selling services on the markets that are more wealthy. And these businesses are struggling now because a lot of these functions are automated. And there are tools that allow us to automate without hiring a human. And if I have a budget as the head of marketing and I have to make a decision whether I'm automating the function and using the saved budget for, paying for extra reach, for example, which we always need for our content. So am I going to use a tool to create content where I can replace a human without the quality of content struggling or suffering and redirect that budget into increasing my reach? Oh yeah, 100%. Which marketer wouldn't make that decision, right? So that's what's happening. And that's why when I joined Genesis, me and the CEO of Genesis, Meg Lickman, we agreed that the ambition is to build the most agile AI-driven marketing team and use our own systems and tools in order to automate what can be automated and then hire high-quality experts to do what only humans can do, which is think, envision, create. And this is what I'm doing right now. And, it's the smallest team I ever had. And it's probably gonna be the most high performing team I ever had as well.
And that's such a prominent trend that I see across some of the probably most successful companies is that headcounts are indeed decreasing. Not because necessarily, it's attributed specifically to AI tools replacing humans. I think headcounts are decreasing because the humans that are indeed brought onto the teams are expected to be more efficient. Back in the day, it was if you want more output, you kind of had to scale headcount to some extent. You didn't really have a choice. There's only so many hours in a day, even in the startup world where people are working, more hours than in standard companies. There is still some finite, ceiling to how much output one human can have. But I do see that AI tools are indeed just increasing the capacity for output from those same amount of hours in a day. And you said something before that I would love to double click on. You said, there are AI tools that are indeed basically ready to deploy into production that you would gladly, rather than trying to outsource or trying to find, again, a way to grow headcount in order to accommodate certain functions, you would gladly hire an AI tool for it. But then there are some roles in which it's just not there yet. Like we still need the human creativity. What are those distinctive roles for you? What are things that you think could absolutely and are absolutely critical to start automating and to start replacing? And what are some of those things that you think just absolutely cannot be substituted in regards to humans versus AI tools, for example?
So the functions that I believe are not replaceable and will not be replaceable until we reach AGI, which I don't think we will ever reach, not in my lifetime. There's just no capability for AGI, no matter who says what. I have their reasons. I don't have those reasons, so I can say what I really think. So yeah, no AGI in sight, and that means that management, communication, and original creation are irreplaceable. Therefore, for people who are great managers, are creative and are excellent communicators, I don't think they will to face the, loss of jobs or fear of not having a job. If you can have all these three capabilities developed, yeah, you're gonna do fine because AI cannot do that, right? You still need a human to manage AI, and AI can manage AI, but at the end of the day, in this loop, you're going to reach the point where a human will have to make a decision. And those decision makers are important. They're irreplaceable. Inputs into AI, AI is dealing with data. What kind of data? If we're talking about creative input, distribution of information, AI is excellent in distributing information. But what kind of information? Those inputs come from a human. The vision comes from a human. And there is always a layer between usually the vision is owned by the CEO in the company, right? Then there are other C-levels that own vision for their direction in their department. And then there is another layer of people who turn that vision into activities, practical things, and they put the input into AI. These people are also irreplaceable, right? Maybe in a very, very small startup and pre-seed stage, you will see the CEO managing all the AI tools and being in charge of all the input. But as the company grows, it just becomes unsustainable because there are other priorities. There's fundraising, there's dealing with investors, there is looking at opportunities at the market, there is product development. None of this is automated or can be automated, really.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And I see that there are some kind of early attempts to, you mentioned fundraising. You have tools like Bordy out there, for example, and, they're trying to match founders with VCs and sort of automate a lot of that process. But I still think ultimately, I don't think we're anywhere near a world in which it's a completely hands-off process. It doesn't require the human input. You have to be able to, as a human, build that trust layer, which I think fundamentally technology has a very, very hard time doing. And I think, yeah, I think absolutely there are the inputs is a really good way to sort of quantify the things that just are very hard to replace. And I think even on the output side, there is so much effort right now in the industry to quote unquote humanize AI. And sometimes I just zoom out and think about that. And I think it's so ironic. I'm like, so you want to humanize AI, but you are sitting there as a human. Maybe this is a task that's better suited for you yourself, and then find things that, maybe don't necessarily require the level of creativity of whatever you're trying to humanize. But I guess, coming off the heels of that, what are some of the ways that you are personally using AI tools in your stack that are creating the biggest wins for you?
So we have built a GTM system that is, I would say, probably 80% automated.
Wow.
It is managed by one team member who reports to me. And we are currently able to generate 19 times more leads than we were able to generate a few months ago before we launched the system. By leads, I mean leads that turn into meetings, not just, random web forms. We don't count, MQLs, SQLs. A lead is something that turns into a meeting. I simplified it to the core. That system involves using our own agents, which are data engineering agents that work and process all the data flows, inflows, outflows, and we create and manage our own pipelines. If you look at my data pipelines for marketing, they look like, quite complex data engineering pipelines. And, I didn't think about it because data engineering is kind of new field for me, but engineers I work with, they were like, oh, well, it looks like something I could work with. And then we use external tools, which are, GTM and marketing products. Two of them are Conversion and Unified GTM, which are very, very helpful. And we have all our fully automated and automated in multiple channels. and it's all looped into one big and beautiful dashboard that anyone in the company with one click can access without the need to log in into any tools. And it sits in our Snowflake and accessible to everyone. So we completely eliminated the need of, oh, where is that lead? Oh, who's in charge of that lead? Oh, where did it come from? What is our website traffic? All those questions that usually pop up in people's heads, and they usually slack marketing at all times of day and night. That's just not happening anymore. There's a link. Everyone has that link saved. Boom, you're on a dashboard that is updated live. Okay. So wherever anything is happening, it's immediately updated and it's there. I'm super, super happy with it because I am like keeping track of things and using multiple tools. And now I have one place which serves everybody, and it's amazing. So for that, we had to build an agent that is collecting all the information, accumulating it. It's been a process. Few people helped within the company, engineers. I'm lucky because I have engineers that can help me with that. But yeah, this is, the grand scheme of things, how the system that I have built, I'm looking into it, thinking how I can optimize and make it better. But from what I see is there is not much I can improve in the processes. It's more about the relevance of our messaging, the time and the signal that we work with. That is a field that is quite new. People started talking about relevance as a marketing term very, very recently, which is surprising because it's just honestly common sense, and market with a lot of common sense. Right? Sell something to someone when they actually need it.
Wow.
Right? Genius. But turning that into marketing practice is something that requires skills and ability. Okay, how do you, it's a clear principle. Now, how do you actually turn it into action? How do you find the signal? You and me, we both know tools that claim that they provide signal are not that great as they claim to be. I'm not using any of them. I use tools that track social media activity. The tool is called Goji Berry. I'm giving it out for free. Guys, you're going to love me for that. Trust me. If you use it properly, it's amazing. So, I use Goji Berry for live updates on signals of people being interested in stuff that I need to sell. And it's been very, very helpful. Larger, more expensive tools, unfortunately, never worked for me in any of the companies I work for.
Yeah, there's this huge revolution right now, and unfortunately to the dismay of some of the I would say, number one placeholders in the industry that have been around for a long time. Think a lot of these, not going to name any names, but ABM style platforms, signal platforms, platforms that basically, have just owned a huge portion of the market share. I think people are really starting to be vocal about the fact that they don't perform nearly as well as they're being sold to perform, and they kind of are just black boxes of proprietary data. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this, free to build industry. Goji Berry is a very new tool, and it's so game changing. I love it myself as well for, just detecting signals and for being able to feed things in real time based on, rather than just some data black box, real signals from real people that are collected from the platforms where they are publishing content. Absolutely.
Especially if we're talking about B2B, and B2B in engineering. This is something I've been dealing with for years, is selling B2B products from engineers to engineers. It's very, very different. If you're selling a B2C, GTC product, for example, you have to work with, multiple data points coming from multiple sources and translate that data into intent and signal. And honestly, they're in such a better place compared to us because customer behavior is on the B2C level is much easier tracked than on the B2B, where a lot is happening is not signaled, is not in the open. It's happening in the dark social, in Reddit anonymously, in private WhatsApp groups, private Slack groups, which are just simply untrackable and private and although it causes discomfort for me and lacks my abilities as a marketer, I would prefer them to stay that way. And I'm going to use other more sophisticated techniques, more personal techniques to penetrate and create influence within those groups rather than using tools that promise to simplify. But these promises have not performed that well.
And I love that approach of there are many blockers, there are many guardrails. This is not possible, this is inaccessible, but where others see blockers, you actually see the opportunity to step up and do something creative, to build a solution that might actually work for your purposes, that incorporates all of the, potential limitations that we have. I was speaking with a friend, he's a very prolific marketer, and he said something to me that really made me like take a pause. He said, "We are going to enter an era in which every single WhatsApp group, like public Slack is somehow going to have a ninja agent sneak into there, posing as a real human." You know how folks from certain limited countries are trying to get hired into US corporations to try to gather data. And, he was telling me, he said, I don't think we're that far away from a future in which we start having to be way more careful about who we're letting into certain communities, and we need to verify identity, to the point that you were making where that data is inaccessible. Definitely something that I've started thinking about, and I never thought we'd we'd hit an inflection point in which I am now genuinely concerned about verifying who somebody is before, I disclose any information or let them into one of my community groups or something like that. So
I think it's already happening. It really depends on what kind of community. I mean, think about private clubs, okay? It's nothing new. Any private club in New York, if you want to be part of, you would have to go through a verification process and at least 3 recommendations. And that's why that's how they keep the prestige. That's why people pay the amount of money they pay for annual memberships. It's because somebody has already done the job of vetting others, and it's totally fine. That's why there are exclusive clubs and exclusive communities, and you have to have merit, provable merit, in order to be part of, which I think is nothing but fair.
yeah, absolutely. I do think, this is now starting to trickle into the digital era, and it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of verification, validation tools are going to be coming out. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's being worked on, especially in the world of blockchain technologies, that is trying to basically put these things into place. But definitely a space to watch. But I do want to recap a couple of the things you said, because I think they're extremely important to note for potentially people just starting off with, their go-to-market strategies or putting their product in front of folks in the world. First, what you said was that outbound is now completely automatable. And I think that is really important to consider. Yes, you can do outbound 100% automated, and yes, you can do that at scale. But I think the very important caveat, and thank you very much for highlighting that, is that the relevance and the quality of your targeting, of your messaging, and how you're orchestrating this outbound that is automated is what's going to make the difference between something that actually works or something that gets you ignored or potentially, gets you penalized. And I think the other thing that I really, really want to stress for folks is this concept of centralization of all of your data. I have found that the most successful companies always have one master dashboard, one master brain that every single team member can access in order to truly understand where are we, how are we performing against our goals, what are those goals, without having to go into a million different tools and create billions of little inefficiencies where people are pinging people for numbers, people are pinging people for data, and it just, slows the whole machine down. So it really, it's the central brain of the operation, but it's also the oil that helps the machine move smoothly along. And I think those things are just super important to note, because I have gotten a lot of questions about Well, I don't think, outbound is completely automatable and you still need to be doing it manually because there's no way to actually leverage the tools right now in order to, do outbound automated at scale. But, you know, here you have it, folks. Esther just let you guys know that it is possible. You just need to make sure that you have good inputs and you need to have good data to work with in order to make sure that you're relevant.
Yeah, that's 100% false that you cannot fully automate outbound. Technically, you absolutely can fully automate in quite sophisticated sequences and multi-branch sequences. You can totally fully automate it. It's a skill and a craft. And feel free to ping me if anybody is interested in learning more how to do it. What cannot be fully automated is the thinking process behind the messaging and the content that you will be distributing using those tools. And that's the research that you can automate partially, but be careful with trusting model with customer research, especially when you're talking about customer insights. I have very little trust in AI tools creating great customer research. Everything I have tried and I have seen coming from other sources so far only looks good on paper, but it doesn't correspond what's actually happening in people's head. If you understand how LLM work, you will understand why it's not possible. So do your customer research, do the unscalable things, do them manually. And customer research is you have to sit on those calls. You have to ask those questions. You have to get into their heads and start thinking like that. That's how you create great marketing.
That's a really good segue, by the way, into something I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned customer research is just one of those things that you cannot and should not be automating because it's not going to lead to great outcomes. And I could tell that you, by nature, are an experimenter. You love to try new things. You love to play with new tools. You love to see what the potential opportunities are. Are there any things that you've tried potentially and you've tried to implement certain tools and certain technologies in order to help improve the efficiency or completely automate, but just haven't worked? So customer research is a great example, and I do agree with that. But is there anything else that people should potentially steer clear of for the time being of trying to automate with AI tools or other technologies?
Customer research, graphic design, and copywriting. So graphic design, I use zero tools.
Mm.
I have an agency that works with us, and I do not plan to use any tools. I think it's a waste of time, money, and you will never get amazing visual results from an AI tool. You just don't. Writing is probably 30% automated. I do a lot of writing myself. We have subject matter experts, engineers in the company that do their part in creating written content. I would say 30% is the tool and 70% is the human. Anything that is repetitive and doesn't require a lot of oversight, low risk, yeah, feel free to automate it with whatever tool you find fit your goal and price. Some of these tools can be pricey, but when I did my calculations and my revenue projections, I could see that the amount of money I save on hiring SDRs, for example, versus the tools that allow me to do the SDR job, especially after I have interviewed a few and compared their skills to the skills of the tool. I could see that unfortunately human input in this particular area is not that valuable anymore. So we replaced SDRs with a bunch of tools and sequences, and it works for us for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's really interesting that you mentioned design because I hear actually, kind of opposing viewpoints. So I love that you took, a pretty strong stance on that. I've heard from folks that we're replacing 100% of our creative efforts with AI in terms of ad creative and, product design and things like that. But actually, ironically enough, I do like to look at kind of the source, and to me, the source of what's possible with AI are the companies that are building these tools themselves. And when you have companies like Anthropic hiring copywriters, you start to really understand that, okay, so maybe they're onto something. They have some of the most powerful tools in the world, and they're not drinking their own champagne. So maybe there's something in the champagne that I should avoid. And it is a really interesting thing to highlight. And I'm seeing that discrepancy a lot. You know, you open up LinkedIn, you open up X, and you have a whole feed full of, I don't have any creative costs anymore, or I fired my whole marketing team. And I think back to your original point, there's so much hype in the industry, whether it's, hyping up the tools or hyping down the tools and saying that they'll never work for anything. And I think it's so important for marketers, for go-to-market folks, to just keep a level head and do your own research and try to look at the case studies and try to follow the money also, right? Are these companies investing in their own tools to use them for their own purposes, or is there something that they're just selling to you and they're selling you a dream and it's never actually going to work in practice? So I really do appreciate you highlighting those points, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out over the next few years, whether, the folks that are leveraging these tools for copywriting, for creative things like design, whether they're going to fall into the sea of sameness trap that we're thinking about, where AI is giving the outputs, then those outputs are reinforcing the inputs, and it continues to just cannibalize itself, and which camp is really going to be the most successful, whether it's the completely unique, original human creative touch or the folks that are, using these tools to maybe make something that shouldn't be more efficient, more efficient.
Again, I think it depends very much on the industry. In B2C and DTC, especially, where you have to create hundreds of creative items to sell something very basic and very simple, like I don't know, a body cream, a moisturizer. And you need to create, 200 just for one campaign visuals to test and see where do you have greater conversions and response, and it's all, the margins are very, very low. There is no point having a human doing that. A human will probably create a key visual and messaging behind it, and then an AI tool can multiply it. I'm not very familiar which tools are good or bad because it's just not interesting for me. But yeah, I'm sure in creative, there's also a level of mundane, redundant activity, changing size of the font and, playing with logo location or different types of illustrative imagery. If that can be automated, because it doesn't bring that much of a new vision or brand, it's just really creating something that a human eye would capture better and react to better. I think that's a good area for automation. But
Yeah.
this campaign, I don't believe a successful campaign will originate inside an AI tool, because based on which customer insights are you going to create that campaign? You need to pull them out from somewhere. You need to analyze them. You need to put all those conclusions into some shape or form of data input. With a prompt, you need to upload all that in the tool. And I'm just talking about some imaginary tool, which I don't even know if it exists. And then that has to spit out like three, let's say, three options for a creative. And then you can compare it to what, human is able to create. And I bet you that what the tool is going to create is not going to be that great. Then if you create this campaign using, human brain, you can put it back into the tool and ask the tool to create, 200 different visuals, different types of elements in them, and then test them. I think that's the process that could potentially work. And I think there is a tool that's been very loud on LinkedIn a few months ago. I think they raised a lot of money. I think it's called Icon.
Mm-hmm. Icon. Yeah.
And that's what they do. They claim to create creative campaigns from scratch, but I got very curious about it. I read reviews, and the reviews said exactly what I thought. It's just the output is not human enough to be successful.
Yeah, it's I think again, just something so important to reinforce. The 0 to 1 is not yet automatable, and that is probably the most critical piece of infrastructure that is going to predict failure or success. It is the customer research, it is the creative input, it is doing something unique and something that stands out and something original, using tools to help scale that out and to help with the efficiency of creating variety, or to help with the, like you said, sizing for different formats, or potentially testing thousands of different angles based on those original inputs. I think that's all fair game. I mean, that's my whole goal with all of these tools, is to make myself more efficient. But thankfully, to this day, I still don't think these tools can out creative me or out original me or do something that, you know, would be interesting enough for my potential audiences to genuinely generate value from. So, yeah, I do agree. And of course, B2B versus direct to consumer, B2C, I mean, huge landscape difference, right? I think B2B, you have potentially smaller audiences, you have a potentially longer purchase cycle, you have much higher consideration, you have buying committees usually rather than just the individual that makes a quick impulse decision or, just getting something for themselves. And I think those are definitely also super important factors to consider in terms of, is it worth potentially trying to automate this away, or would this even work, or would this pass you know, the sniff test, right? The gut check for who your potential target audience is. Um, so yeah, definitely agreed there. I would love to hear your predictions. I'm not going to ask about 5 years because predicting anything 5 years from now is just crazy because things are moving so quickly. But what are some of your predictions for the next 1 to 3 years? What are some of the big opportunities that folks should be looking out for and maybe doing some more research on and planning for? And then what are some of the things that people are hyping up right now, potentially overhyping, that probably won't pan out? You already said AGI, which I do agree with you. It's not coming in the next 3 years. But what are some of those two buckets of things? Things that you do think might help create success, and then things that just will, fall to the wayside as another shiny object.
I don't know if anybody's hyping this up. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But I would like to share something that we're thinking about inside Genesis, and something which I believe has a lot of potential. And it's about how do you store and operate your data within the company. And it doesn't matter if you're a small startup, or you're a large enterprise and you're head of one of the divisions in that enterprise. Human knowledge has a lot of cost inbuilt in it, right? You need to pay those human salaries. So they create that knowledge base, and then they store it somewhere. And then, we hope that we know where they store it and that it's accessible at all times. Even inside us internally, we could see how, as we grow very, very rapidly, how we start having those loopholes where, pieces of data just vanish, disappear. We cannot find them. So think about creating a full-scale digital twin of your company, where every employee contributes their part. And it's like you know, imagine it's Lego pieces, right? And everyone contributes their Lego piece. They take it from this material reality and they put it back into that digital reality. So if something happens to a certain employee, they decide to leave or wherever, they go on a break, their part is not disappearing with them. It's always there and it's accessible. There are different ways of doing it. We call it a digital twin, and we use our own data engineering agents, which are available for us internally and our customers externally, to maintain and preserve that mirror activity, that digital activity that mirrors our permanent real material activity, for that knowledge to be fed into our AI systems, so our AI systems learn and develop as our company continues to grow. So there is no gap between our digital print and what's happening in the real world. And I think that's the topic that is going to be very, very popular in the public discourse, in the enterprise discourse, in products and tools that will be created to operate it, because as we're having conversations with our customers, we understand what a huge value we bring, allowing using Genesis agents, build those digital twins and operate them internally.
Yeah, the digital twin, also very interesting to see enterprises starting to embrace it, because I'm seeing actually solo founders or tiny teams basically build these mission critical systems that sound very much kind of like this digital twin architecture where, you know, they create their CEOs, their CFOs, their CMOs within this kind of like agent orchestration system. And then that way, because there's so little bandwidth and there's so little headcount, they rely very strongly on these systems that they've created in order to even operate on a daily basis. But it's really interesting to see that enterprises are starting to embrace this as well, because I've heard the trope of like, in finance, there's mandatory vacation periods where you can't log into your systems. And then these are obviously serving as, helping folks take some time off and decompress and de-stress, but also are potentially testing for redundancy. And are we able to fill this position while this person is out? And are we continuing to operate smoothly? Or are there any gaps that we need to be able to fill just in case something happens to this person or they decide to to go somewhere else. So yeah, definitely digital twin is a space to look out for, both on the corporate side for companies. And I think there's definitely a pattern that I'm seeing right now where people are trying to scale themselves as well, whether it's, creating their own custom GPT with all of their content and knowledge and data that they've created, or using something like a notebook LM to ingest everyone's content, something that basically somebody's entire library of content, and use that person as a mentor or an advisor, whatever the case is, even down to creating digital avatars of themselves where people use it for audio or for video content. There's a lot of debate about how good of an idea that is, and how much we'll actually start to see that proliferate in the future. But digital twin is absolutely something to watch out for. But any other thoughts about huge major opportunities that folks should be looking out for? Or on the converse, of course, things that people should probably not think too much about and will probably not pan out the way that folks are hyping it up to be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Predicting the future is kind of, that's what investment funds do for a living. Actually, it's interesting. I looked at the PricewaterhouseCoopers report on real estate in 2026. There are certain markets that are pushing up because of the artificial intelligence companies building data centers or buying out data centers and building infrastructures around AI and data, and the price of real estate is pushing up on those markets, although there are really no other prerequisites for that growth. So that was really interesting to see. So you keep your eyes on where the majors of the AI industry, where they're going, and that might be something interesting to look into. I think that things will start slowing down. And we can already notice that in how similar the new models are. There are no major breakthroughs anyway, because I think that transformers are kind of reaching its limit. So things will start slowing down and we will go in depth we will start thinking about, okay, we have this whole stack now. How do we actually use it for real? Okay, we've been talking about it so long. I go to all these events with C-levels in financial industry where we endlessly talk about using AI, implementing AI. But when in private conversations, I ask, how do you measure the impact of AI? Hardly anyone has a good answer. We don't know yet. We're experimenting. I think the 2026, we're going to start seeing companies creating their benchmarks to measure the impact, and versus instead of measuring the impact of AI, which is kind of an artificial and narrow view, they will start measuring the performance of their divisions that have implemented AI versus have not implemented AI, and measuring, okay, here's the process, it's non-AI powered. Now let's take the same process and power it with AI, see how our proper regular KPIs and benchmarks improve with or without AI. And I think if you are anywhere around that, you should probably be the initiator of that process, because before it's been imposed.
I love the point that you made about real estate. And I joke with my friends. I say, hey, if you're looking at real estate out in space, it's about to get much more expensive. So you should capitalize on that sooner than later. But yeah, I mean, these data centers, they require a lot of space in order to operate. And I think they obviously come along with, you know, some energy costs, some potential job creation. There's a lot of factors involved. And so I do think that that's an interesting space to watch. And I think to your point, and something that I've also been seeing a lot of, you speak with folks and they say, we're innovating with AI and every single one of our departments is AI first and we're considering it in all of our efforts. And then you talk, to one level below that to the executors and they say, yeah, we use ChatGPT sometimes in things, and we might have a custom project that we're talking with, but I think truly creating impactful changes, with the technology, the way that it's being sold and marketed into the world, probably hasn't happened yet. And I do think that it will come to a point where rather than just continuous innovation and wow moments and oh my God, look at this new feature and oh my God, I can't believe it can do that, I think we're actually going to start seeing true ROI moments. And I think to folks like you and me, those are the real wow moments. Sure, it's beautiful to see, the new video model or the new image model or these companies competing with each other to one up each other, OpenAI going on code red because Gemini 3 launches. But then I think we're going to enter an era in which, okay, it's amazing that we have all these capabilities, but what's actually delivering impact to our organization? What's actually saving us money, saving us time, improving our efficiency, or potentially contributing just to our bottom line and making us more revenue? So, yeah.
I think one other area of concern should be security. I think we will see quite a few serious data breaches coming in, and they will force the companies to reevaluate their tool stack. Honestly, what's happening with private ChatGPT usage, where a bunch of corporate data is being just uploaded by employees and used, and it's uncontrollable. It's kind of horrifying. So I think that the tools that are built for enterprises like Genesis, it's been built by enterprise data engineers trained to work with enterprises, knowing all the security guardrails. So tools like Genesis and others and systems that we create for enterprises that are safe and secure and that pass all security audits easily like that, because they are in their origin, in their DNA, they're enterprise safe. They will be winning on the market, and we can see the drop in usage, private accounts that are not safe or secure for enterprise environments.
Totally. And companies that want to potentially prevent these types of data breaches or sensitive data being shared with tools that don't necessarily have the level of compliance that companies are requiring for their data should then enable the right tool stack for their employees. Don't expect your employees to not want to be more efficient or to experiment. You should rather expect that they are going to spend the time playing with these tools and trying to see how they can improve their workflows. But unless you're enabling them to use the right tools with the proper infrastructure to guarantee data safety and security, I really don't know what else they would expect. So definitely a great point. I want to ask you something that I think is just a really interesting question to ask and get your perspective on. If you can get one message to every single founder in the entire world at the same time, what would that one message be?
I think it would be something around the purpose and servitude to your customers. That has to always come first whenever you launch a new product or service. Too often, I see things on the market that honestly make zero sense to anyone except the founder, because the founder just got excited about something and thought it would be a good idea, but didn't verify if there is a sufficient market that has a bleeding neck problem to buy that product or service. And that's why the survival rate is so low and it continues to drop. And as you said, the entry barrier has become very, very low. Anybody can do anything with, vibe coding in a few days, but we create so much digital waste. We already have accumulated tons and billions of terabytes of information of all these products that nobody is using and will ever use, and all that code that developers wrote. And it's fine if you're playing and it's for you and your group of friends, but I see startups hiring, promising, living in pipe dreams, inviting people to work for them, getting them excited, and not really thinking about the revenue side of it, raising money, not really thinking about responsibility for the investors. And this is entrepreneurial spirit, part of it, but also the responsibility and the service to the customers, employees, and the community in general has to come first.
You heard it here, folks. Build valuable tools. Do not serve yourself, but serve your customers, and stop contributing to the dead internet. We do not need more dead products in the graveyard.
Well said. I wouldn't be able to say it better than you just did.
Esther, this has been such a fantastic conversation. And again, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. If folks want to follow your journey or hear more about what you're working on and get more content from you, where should they look?
Find me on LinkedIn, Esther Katz. I'm there pretty frequently, and I'll be coming back with my Real Talk AI podcast in the new year more diligently. So I'll see you around.
Amazing. Well, Esther, thanks again, and hope to talk soon, maybe on your podcast.
With pleasure. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.